Everyone. I'm Abhishek. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Appsmith. I'm really excited for this conversation today and a demo that is planned towards the end. So here today, we're going to be talking to the founder of Xano, and we'll be learning more about Xano, as well as we'll be using Xano with Appsmith to actually build an application. So really excited to be here. So first, I just want to talk a bit about what Xano is and why we are so excited about it at Appsmith. So, in the conversation today, first we are just going to go over uh, a quick introduction, and then actually I have a request for community feedback on a particular feature that we are testing at Appsmith. The link for that feature will be available in the YouTube live comments as well as in the YouTube video. And then we'll talk to Prakash, learn more about Xano and Xano's authentication features. And then towards the end, we're going to build an application using Xano in Appsmith. So let's get started here. The first thing is in Appsmith, we've been experimenting with introducing reflow in our UI. Reflow is basically uh, the way by which when you drag in a new widget, the other widget should actually move around. So today in Appsmith, it's difficult to move other widgets out of the way, but we've introduced a new way of doing that, and we have a deploy preview out for it. So I would really request all of you to actually try that out. And this deploy preview will be available in the YouTube comments. It's also available in our Discord. So you can join our Discord and try it out and give us feedback. Would love any help here. So now that we are done with that, let's move on to today's topic. Why Appsmith and Xano? Now, before we go into why Appsmith and Xano, let me talk very quickly about what Xano is and why is it so awesome. First, Xano is actually a no-code database, but it's built on top of Postgres. So it's actually a no-code relational database. But the reason it's awesome is because it provides you like a spreadsheet kind of interface, and you can just use this to create relations, create all your data, or do all of that using a spreadsheet. The other thing that Xano does really well is it provides you with unlimited records. Now, this is something that we know there's a limitation in Airtable. So even though Airtable is a relational database, it doesn't scale that well. So Xano really does that quite well. The second reason Xano is awesome is because Xano provides you an API server. You can create APIs very quickly, transform data, and you can even run like cron jobs and server-side workflows. So you don't need to actually create your own API server. The third thing is you can actually scale Xano without dealing with servers. You don't need DevOps. Xano is built for scale and it works really well as your business or as your product gains more adoption. So all of these three things together really make Xano awesome. And the reason Xano works very well with Appsmith and why I believe Appsmith and Xano go well together is because for any new internal tool, you can just use Xano for the backend, spin up a database, create your data entries there, create relationships between multiple tables, set up like workflow so that you can transform data. And then you can use Appsmith for the front end. Because Appsmith supports any REST API and Xano creates those APIs for you, you can just use Appsmith as a front end and connect to any Xano API. Therefore, Xano for the backend and Appsmith for the front end, I believe, are just perfect for any new internal tool. So next time you need an internal tool, but you don't have a database that's ready already, please do check out Xano. It's very easy to get started, free to use, and you're just going to love it. Now, with this introduction, I want to introduce our main guest for the evening today. So, we're going to meet Prakash. So, Prakash is the CEO and co founder at Xano. But before this, he spent a lot of time working at Google, where he was head of enterprise UX. He worked on Google Apps, which are basically Gmail and all the enterprise features of around surrounding Gmail. and he spent a lot of time as a designer. That's one of the things that you'll actually see reflected in Xano. It's probably one of the easiest products that I've seen to get onboarded to. It's just as lovely to use. So I'm really excited to meet Prakash here. Hi,
Hi
Prakash.
there. How's it going?
Doing really well. So, Prakash, we are excited to hear from you about what is Xano and what are we going to do with it today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Abhishek, for having us today. We are super excited. And I mean, what a lovely introduction to kind of cover all of the benefits of Xano. You kind of took my job away from me. So I appreciate that. We are also very excited to be working with Appsmith because as I was saying just before we got on the stream, we've been so impressed with all of the capabilities of Appsmith, also your user experience and just the delightful ease of use in creating internal tools. So we really appreciate that. And I think we recognize that in each other, us
Yeah.
on the back end and you on the front end. So let me go ahead and run you through a very quick presentation. It's basically going to go very high level on what Xano is. I want to talk about a primer for OAuth for your users or people on the stream that may not necessarily know too much about OAuth. And then I'll hand it over to you to go ahead and do the demo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great, Prakash.
Oh, okay,
Over to you.
perfect. Are you seeing my screen? Okay, great. It looks like
Yes.
everything's being shared right now. First of all, my name is Prakash. I am the co-CEO and one of the co-founders of Xano. My other co-founder, Jack, was supposed to be here. He may be coming in a little bit later, but he also handles sales and revenue. And he was actually the first one to connect Appsmith and Xano and to connect with Abhishek. So we're super excited about this once again. So as Abhishek mentioned, he already covered an agenda. I'm going to go over kind of a primer of Xano and what OAuth is. I'm going to do a very quick example of how you might set up Google authentication within Xano. And then I'm going to pass it over to the Appsmith team to then finish up. Okay. So first of all, as Abhishek covered, we like to say that Xano is the fastest way to build a powerful, scalable backend for your app without any code. So most of you on this call, because you're here for OAuth, understand how software works today, but you basically have the front end. That's what the user interacts with and what Appsmith does and creates so well. And then you have the back end, which is all of your business logic, server, database, and API. And as Abhishek mentioned, that is what we provide as a backend provider, as a no-code backend provider. We provide a scalable managed database. You don't have to have that DevOps team. A very flexible database, just like Abhishek mentioned, the Postgres database, and then a no-code API builder. And this is a really important piece of it because APIs are the glue of the internet. They are what connect one service to another, and that's where you articulate all of your different business logic. So moving into the topic today of authentication and how APIs connect with one another, again, I wanted to give this very high level primer because I think it's important for you to understand the power of what's happening in this demo. So the first thing is, as you understand, APIs connect one service to another. You've probably heard or even used some of these APIs like Google for maps and photos and more, Stripe for payments, and Twilio for SMS and for email. So very popular services like Airbnb might leverage these APIs for different things. So for example, Airbnb might use Twilio to send SMS notifications to their hosts, to their guests, Stripe to process payments for their stay, and then Google for getting not only the mapping location, but also getting photos from the host Google Photos library. So when we think about how Airbnb authenticates with each one of these API services, with something like Stripe and Twilio, they might just leverage API keys, meaning that Twilio and Stripe provide Airbnb unique API keys that are associated with that service that allows Airbnb to take payments and to send emails and SMS. Now, with Google, it's a little bit different. So Google API keys are used to basically use the Google Maps API. Airbnb says, hey, look, I'm Airbnb. I'm going to leverage your Google Maps API. But they also have a service that allows hosts, like people that are renting their place to stay, to upload photos from their Google Drive into Airbnb. And this is kind of the crux of what we're going to talk about today around OAuth, right? So let's go into the user experience of what Airbnb is doing. So this is the host upload photo UI. So when you are renting your place to stay, it's going to say, why don't you add photos for your place? So you'll notice here at the top, you can upload photos directly, or you can select upload photos from your Google Drive. So now Airbnb needs to communicate with Google, right, to get all of your photos off of your Google Drive. So the question becomes, how does one service actually authorize access to another, right? So it's not Airbnb asking for access, it's Airbnb asking you to give access to your Google Photo library. So traditionally, or let's talk about a couple ways that this could happen. So Airbnb could go directly to Google Drive and say, hey, Prakash is going to be a host with me. I want you to give me access to his account so I can take all of his photos away. Well, Google's going to say no. We don't want to necessarily allow that. Okay, so then Airbnb might come to me and say, hey, look, let me have your Google username and password, and then I will be able to get access to the Google Drive service. Well, that's not going to work either. Like technically it would, but we don't necessarily feel comfortable hosting our username and password with another service provider, right? So we say no to that as well. So that is where the introduction of OAuth is, and OAuth stands for Open Authorization. And like I said, this allows one service to authenticate with another through a trusted party. So that trusted party is the user, because each service, Airbnb and Google, trust the user, right? So now what happens is when Airbnb asks for my photos, well, Google is going to come back to me and says, hey, like, are you okay with this? Can we give access? And you might have seen this in the form of these OAuth dialogues, right? So Google might pop up something like what you're seeing here on the left. Spotify might do it on the right. It's basically asking me as the user permission, can we give these limited permissions to the party that's asking for it? And so if I say, yes, I want to allow access, then Google Drive might say, okay, here's an authorization token that you can use for later. And then they pass a limited access token. Now, limited access is important because it's going to only allow just the photos that I have given permission to, like not my entire Google universe. And so then when Airbnb receives that token, the next time I say, hey, as a host, I want to upload photos from my Google Drive, well, Airbnb can then use that limited access token and then get the photos that they need. That limited access, remember, only giving them access to what I gave them access to. So that, in a nutshell, is how OAuth works, right? And there's OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. OAuth 2 is the most commonly used protocol. It's used by most services to authorize access to another service. There is OAuth 1. It's still used in some things, but we're not going to cover that today. Just know that OAuth 2 is the most commonly used. So with that primer set, let's just go very quickly into Xano and I'll show you how you might set up OAuth authentication with Google specifically. So I have a Google workspace already created. This is in my Jumpstart, and I named it OAuth Workspace. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue, and I'm going to just start this project from scratch. I'll leave it as just a user table. I won't add any more database tables. And I'm going to go into the last screen of our onboarding, which is how will my users log in? And the traditional email login is with JWE tokens. This is when you're allowing a user to log into your application. However, I might want that authentication as well as Google OAuth in the way that I just told you. And as you can see, we also have pre-built extensions for Facebook, LinkedIn, GitHub, Twitter, and Auth0. We have Apple and even more OAuth providers coming soon. So when I go ahead and click finish, it's going to go ahead and load up my workspace. And then I can see I need to finish the setup for Google OAuth. When I click this, you can see that it takes me directly to the Google OAuth extension, and it gives me step-by-step instructions on how to set it up. When I click configure, it's going to ask me for a Google OAuth client ID and a Google OAuth secret. Now, if you don't know how to get those, again, that is what this step-by-step is for. And you can even click a video walkthrough where we walk through in detail how to get all of this information. So we try to make it as simple and straightforward as we can for you. And so if you already have a Xano account and you didn't go through onboarding, you just need to go to our marketplace. You click on featured right over here. user authentication, and then you can click Google OAuth, which is over here on the right-hand side, right over here, and then you can install it yourself. So I won't go through this configuration entirely, just again, because you can go through this video walkthrough, but hopefully this gives you a good primer as to what Google OAuth is, or what OAuth is in general, how to install it on your Xano account, and now Abhishek and the team at Appsmith will show you how to leverage it and install it with an amazing Appsmith front end.
Thank you so much, Prakash. This sounds great. So Prakash, we have one question from a user.
Sure.
So the question is this kind of like NoCoDB? Do you know NoCoDB, and uh, do you know what it
I don't know NoCodeDB. Can you talk a little bit about what that is at a high level?
So NoCoDB is an open source project which provides an Airtable-like interface for
I
any
see.
database.
I
So
see.
we
Yeah,
just love to know the comparison.
yeah, let me talk about Airtable just holistically here. So things like Airtable, they're known as social CRMs. They are very accessible ways for people to not only have access to data, but to create views to see it in the way that they want. Airtable does an amazing job of this, and tools like NoCodeDB obviously is an open source alternative. Now, we have been talking with other tools similar to NoCodeDB to plug in Xano's database into this, but I think where Xano is different is we're not a social CRM, we're a complete backend. If you read Airtable's documentation, they're like, you shouldn't build a scalable application with us. And I'm assuming it's the same with NoCodeDB. It's just views on how you look at and interpret the data. For us, you're creating full-scale applications that you can plug into an internal tool creator like Appsmith, into a mobile device front end using something like like DraftBit or Bubble or one of those tools. And we are that centralized backend that can power all of the front ends and be scalable to boot.
Yeah. And the other difference is NoCoDB doesn't ship with a database. It expects you to connect to a Postgres or a MySQL database, but it provides you a spreadsheet, kind of like an interface on top of that. So that would
Yes,
be another major difference here. Thank you, Prakash.
sure.
So I think we can move on to the next bit of the session where we'll have Confidence, who's a developer advocate at Appsmith, who's going to actually build something using Xano and Appsmith. High Confidence. So Confidence, I think, is having a bit of an internet issue.
He's saying hello forever. So, there he goes.
I think it's better now, right?
Yes. Now we can see you moving. So that's awesome.
Okay. Like I said, let me go ahead to share my screen. All right. I think you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right. So what we're going to be building today is an authentication system with Xano, and I'll illustrate how you can build this using Appsmith. So this is the completely built app, what we will be building out by the end of this demo, and I'm just going to show everything to you. So to start, you have a login page, and you can click on the button to log in with Google. So the whole authentication flow is set up with Google, and when you click on this, it is going to bring up your Google account to select an account to use for the authentication. Because I already have this selected or logged in previously, it automatically detects, and you can see that a code token has been appended to the URL. So I can continue, and you see my name is being shown up here on the screen. So I can continue with the login, and here I am taken to the dashboard of my application. My email is shown up here, and I can go on to log out. So I'm just going to show you something real quick to show that the main part of the application is actually secure, which is this dashboard that is visible here. So I'm going to log out. I already copied the page URL to the home page. So I'm just going to log out and then try to visit the home page. And here you see that we have a message telling us to go log in. That's because we already logged out. So people wouldn't be able to copy a page URL and then try to use that as a login. Out and think we can get started.
Awesome.
So
That
I'm going
looks
to
really cool.
Really exciting.
yeah, thank you. So I'm going to share a second screen for us to get started. This is some starter codes that has the main part of the application. This is the home page right here. We have the table, we have map. This is the part of the app we want protected. So to show you how everything is done using Xano, I'm just going to create a new account so that you see the entire process. For my name, for my email, I'm just going to put a new email address, and let's quickly get a password. All right, set that to be the password. I'm going to say I'm a developer, and I'm going to be building an internal tool. So agree to the terms and sign up.
We'll just give confidence a minute or more to come back. Prakash, while we wait for confidence, is authentication one of the most popular use cases for Xano?
Yeah, a lot of people use us for authentication in general. Like they use JWE tokens to basically have their users log in. But more and more people are starting to leverage OAuth to allow their users to log in to other services. And why is this? Well, typically users, I'm sure all of us have used like some sort of social
Yep.
authentication like Facebook or Twitter. It's just easier to have a trusted provider handle the authentication piece of it. And
Right.
so, I think for us, we see a lot more people installing these OAuth extensions to make that happen. And I'm actually also excited. I mean, this is something we could talk about later, but now with Web3 and, for example, login with MetaMask and things of that nature, you're going to be able to log in a more decentralized fashion. And so these are some of the things that we're thinking about as we kind of work on the next versions.
That's really interesting, because I think one of the things that Web3 has been missing are no code and low code tools which help you build things very quickly. Because most people passionate about Web3 tend to be entrepreneurs or just people really interested in the technology, but not necessarily engineers. So that
Yes,
sounds cool.
absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, I'm
Any
back now. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, so we're walking through the process of creating an account, and this is still loading up. So I'm just going to reload this. I think we had an issue when my internet went off. Okay, so let us say I have intermediate experience. I am going to be building with other and
And
set Appsmith.
I'll and I should mention Appsmith is going to be a default option for that in the next build, which is going out today. So you won't even have to
Yes,
type that in anymore.
All right, cool.
that is
All
awesome.
right.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So I'm going to create my workspace, start from scratch, and leave the default user table as Prakash did in his demo. So click on continue, and also select the Google Auth for authentication. We can go on to select some of these, but this demo would specifically be focusing on Google Auth. So I can click on finish to finish up the process. And here we are taken to the dashboard. All right, so since this is done, I'm just going to go back to my Appsmith app and build a new page for the login flow. So I'm just going to create a new page, and I'm going to call this page login. And for the login page, we need a couple of widgets. So I'm going to place this here. Uh, we need a button to initiate the login flow, and we also need a text to let the user know that this is a login page. So we have the login text here, and we also have the button right here. For the text, we can say login and style this a bit. And same also goes for the button. You can say login with Google. And let us style this a bit to reflect the Google login scheme. We can make this rounded and expand this so that we have the entire text trainer. Okay, so this looks good for the login page. Heading back to Xano and going to the API tab, you can see that we have a new API resource created for Google Auth. And taking a look at this, we have a couple of endpoints we can use to build out this authentication flow. So the first we need to hit is endpoint. This is going to start the authentication process. Then we also can choose to run a login flow using the login URL or a sign up flow using the sign up URL. Or better still, we can use the continue endpoint, which combines both the login endpoint and the sign up endpoint. So it means that if the user coming to use this app does not already have an account, it automatically creates an account and signs that user in. So I think this is the best and we can go with it. But we need to do some configuration. So I'm just going to go to the settings tab and we need to configure two variables. We need to configure the client ID and the client secret. So let's go to do this and we'll be able to paste in these values here. I'm going to my Google console. I'm just going to create a new OAuth client ID.
And just while you're doing this, on the Xano side, we have, again, links to go directly to the Google developer console for you to create all of this stuff. And so now Confidence will show you step by step when you get there how to create a new OAuth client.
All right, cool. So I'm copying over the client ID and pasting this here. And let's also get the client secret. I'm going to paste this here and we have the configuration done. So I can click on the save button and that's all we need to configure on the Xano end of the flow. So let's open this up. Heading back to Appsmith, but before that, I need to grab the init endpoint URL. So I'm just going to open this up and copy this URL. And taking a look at information for this specific endpoint, you can see that we require a redirect URL to be passed as a query parameter to this endpoint. So let's go build out this URL. I am just going to create a new data source in the login page. So this is data source, create new API. Let's call this init API and paste in the URL we copied over. We need to pass in some redirect URL. And for the redirect URL, that would be the welcome page you saw in the built application. So I'm just going to quickly create a new page and call this welcome. And for the page URL, I can just copy this and head back to the init API we were configuring earlier and paste this right here. All right, so we can take a look at this by clicking on the run button and we should get an auth URL that we would need to navigate to whenever the user clicks on the button. So we can head back to the page and wire it up to work with the login button. So when the login button is clicked, what we can go to do is to execute the init API query. And when it is successful, we want to perform a navigation to the auth URL that is returned from the init endpoint from Xano. So this is going to be init api.data.auth URL. Yep, and that looks good. So we can test this out by clicking on the button. So I'm going to click on the login with Google button. Oh, we need to also put the redirect URI in the Xano client ID we just created. So I forgot to do that. I'm just going to do that quickly. So add a URI and I'll paste this in, save this, and then this should work. So I'm just going to head back. And try to log in with Google. I think I need to reload this a bit. So maybe there's a typo in the API parameter I'm sending up. So I'm just going to verify this. So we have the init API, and okay, this looks good. So I'm going to click on the run button. All right, and we can go back to test this. Still having the same error. Just going to quickly check out what the error is. This looks good.
Yeah, looks good to me. Debugging on the fly with everyone. I like it.
Okay, let's run this one more time. Run. All right, and click on login with Google. It's still the same error.
So it looks like it's missing the parameter, so it's not getting past the redirect URI.
Oh, okay. I see where the error is coming from. Thank you for spotting that.
Yeah, no
So
worries.
I think I made a mistake of making this a header instead of a query param. So I just need to
There we go.
move this. Yeah, I need to move this over.
Yeah, and just the redirect URI, again, it's just to tell Google, okay, when the user is authenticated, which page should we send them to? Because after you authenticate with that other service, you need to tell Google who you trust, right? And so confidence here is just making sure that that's a parameter that's passed to our Google init API endpoint to send them to the right place. So now it should work.
Yeah. So testing this one more time. And now we are taken to the welcome page. So this works. Thanks for helping us spot that. All right. So we now need to actually perform the login, because taking a look at the URL for the welcome page, you can see that a code token has been appended to the URL with some other parameters, and we need to send that token up to Xano using the continue endpoint. So I'm just going to copy this endpoint URL, and here on the welcome page, I'm going to create a new API and call this continue API. I can paste this in here. And for the params, I need to send up two things. The first is code, which we can grab from the URL right here. So this is appsmith.url.queryparams.code. And similarly, we need to pass in the redirect URI. So this is redirect URI and the URL of the welcome page. All right, so this looks good. So I can click on the run button, and you see here that the response from Xano includes the user's information, which is the user's token, which can be used to make other authenticated requests as the particular logged in user. Also have the user's name and email being sent back here as well. So what we need to do, since we're getting this back, is that we need to save it temporarily in the Appsmith store, and then we can use this across other parts of the application. So heading back to the canvas for the welcome page, what I can do here is quickly create a UI to welcome whoever is trying to sign in. So for this, we need an image. I'm just going to put this here. And for the image URL, I'm going to paste in some image URL here. Then we need a text saying welcome. So for this text, you see welcome, and then the name of the user trying to log in. So this is going to be coming from the continue API. This is continue API dot data dot email name dot name, right? And you can style the text a bit. So I'm going to expand this to take up the entire space. And we need one more button to actually store that user's data coming from the Continue API in the Appsmith store. So we need a button widget for this. And for this button, I'm just going to say continue. All right, and we can make this rounded and then we can expand this a bit. All right, so this looks good. When the button is clicked on, we want to store the user's data in the store and then navigate to the home page. So to do this, I am just going to enable JavaScript and write some ify here that would contain the logic for everything we need to do when the login happens. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to save the user's data. So we can use the store value function and save it in a key called user. And for the data, this will be coming from the Continue API dot data. And when that is done, we can perform the navigation to the home page. So we can use the navigate to function and then do navigation to the home page. And that's all we need to do for this page. So I can test this out by clicking on the continue button. And here we are taken to the main part of the application. And we can go on to do things like display the user's information or even build a logout flow. So to see the currently logged in user, I'm just going to place a text widget here. And we can display the user's email. So for this, we'll be reading it from the Appsmith store since we have that saved earlier. So this will be store.user.name, for example. And we can also go into build a logout flow. So we need a button. We need to resize this and move it to the side here. And for this button, we can say logout and style this bit. So set the button variant to secondary, make this rounded, and that's a logout button. But the button actually does not do anything yet. So we need to write some JavaScript for the behavior we want when the button is clicked. So when this button is clicked on, we can delete the user's data from the store and also navigate the user to the login page so that the user can go login again. So we can use the store value function to do replacing the user's value in the store. So this will be the user key. And we can just replace whatever we have there with an empty object. And then we can do a navigation to the login page. All right, so this looks good. So we can actually click on the button here to log out. But the problem right now is that a user who has access to the homepage URL can visit the homepage and still be able to see the dashboard, even if the user is not logged in. And that is not what we want. So we have a tab widget here that has two tabs. The first tab shows the homepage of the application. And for the second tab, we can configure this to show some message to let the user know to log in. So for the tabs, I'm just going to rename this to authenticated and unauthenticated. Right? And for the default tab value, we can choose which tab to show based on the state if the user is logged in. So we know if the user is not logged in, the user data in the store would be an empty object. So we can go check for the user's data in the store. So this is going to be store.user, and we can check for the user's token. So the token, if this is valid, what we can do is to make the authenticated tab the tab shown up to the user. So this is authenticated. If not, we can show the unauthenticated tab. Okay, so we have a user logged in and we have the evaluated value set to authenticated right now. So if the user actually is not logged in, we can go in to do some things like display image, display some message to let the user know to go log in. So for the image, I'm just going to bring an image widget here. And we need some text widgets, so we can say not so fast. And then lastly, provide a button here for the user to go to the login page to start the login flow. So let's say login. And when this is clicked on, all we need to do is to navigate to the login page. So for the page name, this is login. And we can style this button. Yeah, and this looks good. Last thing we need to do here for the tabs widget is that we can hide the tab header here. So I'm just going to hide this so that it looks like everything is a single page when the authenticated page shows up and also when the unauthenticated page shows up. So this looks good, and we can go try the flow. So I'm going to log out now. And then I can click on login with Google. Now we are taken to the welcome page, and the token that is appended to this URL is sent to Xano, and that is exchanged for the user's data. And I can click on continue. And here we have access to the main dashboard. So if I copy this URL and try to log out, and then try to go visit the homepage URL, we should see the message that tells us to go back to login. And we can see that right here. Yeah, so this is how easy it is to configure authentication with Xano and Appsmith.
That is awesome confidence. And that was all done in about 25 minutes. That's extraordinary. And that includes the bugs that we ran into, or rather the putting the params in the header. Maybe not so much of a bug. Really
Yeah,
great.
it's just it's very natural debugging that you have to do. And I think that's one takeaway that people need to learn, is that building these nuanced applications, you still have to kind of think through the logic and the workflow of things, and there's naturally going to be debugging. But Abhishek, to your point, the fact that we're able to do these things in less than an hour, I mean, unless you've experienced trying to build OAuth before and now using tools like Appsmith and Xano, you don't really appreciate how much faster it can be.
Yeah, it's just as insane. It basically means like you can go from an idea for your side project to having something that's live on maybe like Product Hunt or Hacker News in a weekend. It's just all happening so quickly. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. And one of the questions that I asked this in the chat, but I'd love to just hear you kind of speak to this, is Appsmith seems so powerful and so flexible. And I know that you kind of are branded for internal tools, but is it also possible for people to use you for external apps that they want to create as well?
So people do use us. Our focus has definitely been on internal applications and control panels, because that's the personal problem that I and my co-founders we faced, and we really want to get it right for that. Because what we've seen is consumer apps have become much better. They're good looking, they're performant, but that hasn't happened for internal applications.
Yes.
So we really want to get that right first. But having said that, we have seen people build external facing applications like portals or ways to track crypto or climate, weather, stock markets, even e-commerce apps. We've seen a bunch of those. Now, we're not exactly geared for it, especially because of our visual elements. Our theming elements and our visual elements are still quite limited today. But I'm hoping over the next quarter it's going to change, and over the next few quarters we'll actually bring about a lot more features that I think will help you build like really high quality consumer grade applications.
Yeah.
But as of today, we are definitely quite focused on admin panels, internal
Yeah,
apps.
that makes sense, and I think a good segue or a bridge to that world is maybe something that Achin kind of mentioned earlier. Typically people, when they build applications, they're not even thinking about it, but there needs to be an administrative portal piece of it,
Yeah.
right? To manage users, to manage billing and payments, and look at performance and dashboards, and that's usually an afterthought. And with
Yeah.
tools like Appsmith, you're able to, I can just see how easily it is. You can use your custom built components to build that and just hook up the APIs and then manage all of your users in one place. So that might be a great place to start bridging into that kind of consumer external facing world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think so, and that's where I think having something like Xano is especially powerful because we constantly keep getting asked, "Hey, can I spin up a Postgres DB?" But we obviously don't want to do that because it's such a complicated thing to do and such a complicated thing to manage, especially scaling it and uh, ensuring that people are able to create APIs on top of it. Uh, so that's where we've been telling people about Xano, and I'm hoping next time somebody wants an internal tool from scratch where they do not have a database, they can just go to Xano, sign up, and then create APIs, and then come over to Appsmith and use us. I think that's like a great match.
Yeah, I think more and more people are going to like. There are going to be some purists that want to manage their own database and their own servers, and there's definitely use cases
Yeah,
for that. However, I think as you're saying, there's a lot of engineering lift and knowledge to be able to do that well, right? Like
right.
you said, even scaling a database, to scale it vertically is one thing, to scale it horizontally is another thing. People don't even
Yeah,
realize what those terms mean, and so it's better to have a service that just focuses on that and makes it easy and accessible to people like Xano. And then similarly on the Appsmith front, building these tools, you could hand roll it or you can use some of these clunky, internal tool editors out there. But why not have something that's performant, that has widgets, that's going to address all of your use cases? And I would even say your UI is super clean. Like I think you all have done a very good job at presenting very usable, very compelling widgets that people can build awesome internal tools with. So I'm even excited to get in and to build some stuff with Appsmith, especially after watching Confidence run through the demo and seeing how easy it is.
thanks. I really appreciate that you liked our UI because I know you spent so much time on design. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of
I
course, of course.
had one question that came up actually, which I think a lot of people would want to know. What is the pricing model for Xeno? How much of it is free, and when does somebody actually need to start paying for it?
Yeah. So the way we try to, well, the way we've tried to structure this is that you should be able to build your MVP at no cost, right? You should be able to build as much as humanly possible, and that's why we offer a pretty generous free plan in the build plan. You can do up to 10,000 records. You can create as many API endpoints as you want. You can test internally and run and debugger to your heart's content. It's only when you start connecting and really utilizing that external API and picking up that usage that it makes sense to move on to the launch plan, right? So I would always tell everyone, start with the free plan, build as much as you possibly can. And then as you actually launch to a broader set of users, then it's time to graduate up into launch and then eventually scale. And that's typically what we see with people. And you probably see this with Appsmith as well. You have a lot of tinkers, like people that are just testing ideas. They shouldn't pay, right? They should just be able to see, is this the right tool for me, right? Can I accomplish these small little workflows in your product? And then when they're ready to take it more seriously, they graduate into the next tier. So that's why we try to really delineate. You're either tinkering and you're doing that for free, you're launching to a bigger set of users, or you're scaling from that product market fit onwards.
Hmm. That makes sense. That sounds great. I think the whole idea is that there should be no barrier for you to get started and build what you need,
Yeah.
and you should only pay if you know it's going to succeed and you want it to scale. Before that, you should just build and experiment and uh, show it to more people and just get that product out. So that sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're and I know you share the same philosophy. But at Xano, we try to be as hands-on as possible. We run office hours every week. We have a very vibrant and active community. The fact that Abhishek, you're putting this on and this is going to live on in perpetuity. So people that want to learn about OAuth and learn how to do that with Appsmith and Xano, they're going to see that. So I would just say, encourage anyone either that's on the live stream right now or watching this in the future, if you're having trouble or if you think that this is the right tool, but you are stuck somewhere, please reach out. Like, we're all here to make sure that you're successful using our products. And we're just very hands-on founders, and we would love to see you succeed.
That sounds great. Yeah, we believe in the exact same philosophy. And I know even you believe so much in YouTube tutorials, documentation, blogs, and these are all awesome ways to help our users and help our community. I think that's one of the biggest reasons we've been pushing for more users of Xano uh, that come to Appsmith without a database, and then we just ask them to use Xano because we know that it's so easy to get started. There's just so many videos out there and so many tutorials out there. So that's exciting.
Awesome. I see we have our a no-code celebrity in our midst, in Steve Stava. He I don't know if you know Steve personally, but he has been a massive advocate, and he was with us from the very beginning. He kind of took a chance on us sometime last year, and he's watched us incrementally grow. And apparently, this is what he's saying about Appsmith as well. He's been amazed at how quickly we've been able to iterate, to respond to community feedback, and to really get things out there. So I think, we're gonna the tool is never done, right? We're always working to enhance it, to abstract away the complexity, and to make it easier for everyone to use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just going to be like more features, more power, and while we are doing all of that, simplifying everything so that it's just so much easier to use. And thank you so much, Steve, for mentioning that. So with this, we are nearly at the end of our presentation and our session. Thank you so much, everyone who's attended today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the YouTube comments. We'll be tracking it, watching it, and we'll reply there as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can see us in our Discord community, or we'll see you on our GitHub issues or wherever you are. So with this, thank you so much, Prakash, for spending time with us and talking about Xano. And I'm looking forward to doing more tutorials together.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you so much for working with us on this. We're also looking forward to more and more tutorials together as well.
That's awesome, Prakash. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.